Hey guys, can anybody tell me who these significant figures are? Let me know down in the comment section if you know their names and what they've done. But I'm actually more interested if anybody could tell me if any of these figures are not significant. Maybe today's lesson will help you out with that. My name is Miss Danielson, and today we're looking at rounding to significant figures. Let's get started. Not to confuse you about the types of significant figures we saw on the title page, the mathematical definition of significant figures is a little bit different. Significant means of importance, and we definitely saw some important faces there. And figures means a physical representation of something. So a person could be a figure. But in writing, a figure is a character, so a letter or a symbol or a numerical digit. So numbers from 0 to 9. In that case, in mathematics, we would say a significant figures are the most important digits of a number. If you were with us for our previous lesson on place value, you should be able to tell me which digits have the greater value. The ones that are further to the left in a number, or the ones that are further to the right. If you were not with us for that lesson, I'm linking it down in the description box below, so you can feel free to check that out and come back when you feel more prepared. Here's an example I'd like you to try though. Circle the most significant figure in these values. Remember, significant means most important. So which of these digits are the most important? That is the highest value. For 4,528, I would say that the 4, which is in the thousands position, is definitely of more value or importance than the 5 in the hundreds, or the 2 in the tens, or the 8 in the units. Hopefully you understand what we're looking for here. So go ahead and copy down the other values and circle the most significant figures. For 12,680, the 1, which is in the tens of thousand position, is the most significant. For 9,800, the 9, which is in the thousands position, is the most important. Hopefully you can see here that it's always the digit that is further to the left that is of the highest place value, so it's the most significant. Make sure you get that down for your note. However, maybe there's an exception here. For this next number, 0.0432, or by place value names, we could say that this is 432, and the place value of that 2, tens of thousands. So that's 432 tens of thousands. What's the most significant figure here? Is it the 0, which is in the units, the 0, which is in the tenths, the 4, which is in the hundredths, the 3, which is in the thousandths, or the 2, which is in the tens of thousands? It's the 4 in the hundredths position, because of course the 0 in the units position has no value, so it's not very significant if it has no value, nor is the 0 in the tenths position. So it's the first non-zero digit that has the highest significance or the highest value. Leading zeros and trailing zeros are not significant. So for example, in the number 12,680, this 0 at the end is not considered significant. It has no value. In the number 9,800, these two trailing zeros, those are the zeros at the end of the number that trail off to the right-hand side, those are not significant either. So the number 9,800 has only actually got 2 significant figures. And as we've just seen, the number 432 tens of thousands, or 0.0432, has got 2 leading zeros, which are not significant. Now, even though they're not significant, that doesn't mean that they're not important. We definitely need them in order to show the place value of the other digits. 432 tens of thousands is not the same thing as just 432. Something you'll want to write down for your note is that the zeros are not normally considered significant figures, as they have no value. But there is an exception. The only exception is when the 0 is used to separate non-zero digits. So for the number 42, for example, compared with the number 402, that 0 that sits between the 4 and the 2, which are both definitely significant because they do have a value, that 0 is considered significant. So the number 42 has got 2 significant figures in it, while the number 402 has got 3 significant figures to it. This is important when you're asked how many significant figures a value might have, or when you are asked to round specifically to some number of significant figures. So in this example, I want you to copy the instructions as well as each of these values and highlight or underline the 3 most significant figures in each of the following numbers. So in the number 4,829, the most significant figures are the digits furthest to the left, so that's the 4, the 8, and the 2. So this number originally has 4 significant figures. For question B, 583 and 100, the 3 most significant figures are the 3 non-zero digits furthest to the left. So 583. For question C, the 3 most significant figures would be the 1, the 6, and the 9. For D, however, we've got some leading zeros here. The 3 most significant figures in this value would be the 2, 3, and 7. And in E, what are the 3 most significant figures here? The 4, the 0, and the 2, or the 4, the 2, and the 7? In this case, the 0 is significant because it's enclosed between 2 non-zero digits. It's not a leading 0, like in D, nor is it a trailing 0. Next, I want you to round each of these values to 3 significant figures. So I've already highlighted my first 3 significant figures. I now just need you to round these numbers as we've done before with place value and decimal places. If you missed those lessons, check the description box below. Our rounding rules will be the same. So look at the last digit of our 3 significant figures. This 2 has got a 9 to the right of it. 9 is more than 5, so the 2 will round up, 4,830. We need that trailing 0 after it to show the place value of the other significant figures. However, we don't consider that 0 significant. And whenever I round a value, first of all, I use this symbol here to show that these values are not equal. They're not exactly the same. They are approximately the same. And I put in brackets the degree of accuracy that I've rounded to. So for our next number, 583 and 100th, the 3 significant figures are 583. The last of those digits is a 3, and it's got a 0 to the right of it. 0 is not 5 or higher, so it's not going to round up. 583. In this case, I don't need any trailing zeros because the 5, 8, and 3 are all already in the correct place value. The 5's in the hundreds, the 8's in the tens, and the 3 is in the units. For question C, when I round this to 3 significant figures, that 9 has got a 6 next to it. Any number 5 or higher is big enough to make our last digit round up. And a 9 would round up to one value higher, which is 10. Now, as we can't fit 10 in one place value, I'll put a 0 here, and I'll pass the 1 up to the next place value. So that 6 is going to get added with that 1 from the 10. So that's going to be 1,700. In this case, it may look like it's only got 2 significant figures to it, but I did first consider the 3 significant figures, and when I rounded, the last of those 3 significant figures turned into a 0. So here it's really important that I make clear I rounded to 3 significant figures here. Don't be mistaken and think that I rounded to 2 significant figures. For question D, we've got these trailing zeros here. So we'll start looking at our 3 significant figures after those. The last of these 3 significant figures is a 7, and to the right of it, we've got a 6, which is 5 or higher, so we will round that 7 up. That 7 becomes an 8. The red zeros, which are leading this number, are not significant. They're just helping to make sure that these figures are in the correct place values. The 2 is in the thousandths, the 3 is in the tens of thousandths, and the 8 is in the hundreds of thousandths. So we certainly don't want to say that this is the same thing as 238. This is 238 hundreds of thousands. That's 238 divided by 100,000. So big difference there. For question E, to three significant figures, our last of our three significant figures is a 2, and to the right of that we've got a 7. A 7 is 5 or higher, so the 2 will round up. 1 more than 2 is 3, so 403. That's the three significant figures. No need for trailing zeros here, because the 4 is in the hundreds position, the 0 is in the tens position, and the 3, which was the 2 rounded up, is in the units. Now, go ahead and copy that down if you haven't already, and make sure you copy this little note as well. For this next example, all of the numbers from A to E need to be rounded to one significant figure, to two significant figure, and to three significant figures. Go ahead and copy the question down, including the instructions and the original values, and feel free to hit pause if you want to try that for yourself. I'm just going to get started here. So 5,249 to one significant figure, that is one non-zero digit in the highest of the possible place values. With a 2 next to it, that 5 is not going to round up, it will stay a 5 in the thousands position, so I will need some trailing zeros. 5,000. And remember, when I round, I make sure I put in brackets here to explain what degree of accuracy I've rounded to. If I wanted to round the same value to two significant figures, the second significant figure would be this 2, and to the right of this 2 is a 4. 4 is not 5 or higher, it's not big enough to round the 2 up, so that would stay a 2, it would be 5,200. Again, with two trailing zeros after it, which are not significant, to maintain our place values. This is two significant figures. If I were to round this value to three significant figures, 5, 2, and 4 are our most significant figures. With a 9 after the 4, that's definitely 5 or bigger, so that's going to round up. That's going to be 5,250 to three significant figures. The trailing zero is not significant, but it is necessary. Now, had I asked you to round this the other way, so starting with rounding to three significant figures, do not ever round the original value to three significant figures and then round your answer. Because looking at this answer, 5,250, if I were to round this to two significant figures, I've got a 5 and a 2, and after that 2, I've got a 5. 5 is 5 or higher, so that would round this 2 up to make it a 3. But look over here. We don't want 5,300 because this is only a 5 because it's previously been rounded up. We don't want to make a bigger rounding error than necessary, so we never repeatedly round a value. On to question B, to one significant figure, that's where that 2 is, right? Because this 0 is not significant. This is a 2 with a 0 after it. The 2 will not change, 0.2. I don't need any trailing zeros after that to show that that 2 is in the tens position, but I did need that leading 0. The two significant figures, that would be a 2, and this 0 is significant because it's between two non-zero digits. So we've got 2, 0 with a 1 after it is not going to round that 0 up. So to two significant figures, the leading 0 was not significant, but the trailing 0 is necessary. It is significant. So it's important that you write that it was rounded to two significant figures, and you do put that trailing 0 there. The 2 and the 0 are our significant figures. So three significant figures, that would be the 2, the 0, and the 1. But the 1 has a 7 after it. 7 is 5 or higher, so that's going to round this up to a 2. So that's 0.202. Again, a leading 0, which is not significant, but this 0 that's between two significant figures is significant. So three significant figures, 202 thousandths. Next, question C, to one significant figure, that would be the 4 with a 5 after it. That would round up to 5. I need these trailing zeros to make sure that that 5 is in the thousands position. To two significant figures, 4, 5 with an 8 after it, that 5 is going to round up, so that's going to be 4, 6. But I'll need some trailing zeros to make sure that 4 is in the thousands position. and the 6 is in the hundreds position. For 3 significant figures, we've got 4, 5, 8, and there's a 0 after the 8. So that's definitely not going to round up. That's 4, 5, 8, and I need a trailing 0 again to keep that 4 in the thousands position, the 5 in the hundreds position, and the 8 in the tens position. For question D, as you can see, we've got some leading zeros, so those are not significant. Our first significant figure is the 1, and it's got a 9 after it. So that is big enough to round it up. That'll be, again with the leading zeros, to make sure that that 2 is in the hundredths position. The 2 significant figures would be the 1 and the 9, and the 9 has a 4 to the right. That's not big enough to round it up, so that would stay 1, 9, but I need the leading zeros to keep that 1 in the hundredths position and the 9 in the thousandths position. The 3 significant figures, that would be the 1, 9, and 4, and the 4 has a 7 after it. That's definitely 5 or higher, so that will round the 4 up. So that's 195, but make sure we have those digits in the right place values. The 1's in the hundredths position, the 9's in the thousandths position, and the 5 is in the tens of thousands position. For our last example, to 1 significant figure, that's this 9 here, but watch out, the 9's got a 9 next to it. That's definitely big enough to round it up. So the 9's going to round up 1 to make it 10. So to 1 significant figure, that's 10. This 1 is significant. The 0, which is trailing, is not significant. This is 1 significant figure. To 2 significant figures, that would be the 9 and the 9. But this 9 has a 7 next to it, which again is big enough to round this 9 up. But if I round this 9 up, it becomes a 10. So I would put a 0 in this position. I pass the 1 up to that position, and that would make 9 plus the 1 another 10. So again, I put a 0 in the units position and a 1 in the tens position. To 2 significant figures, I'm counting that 0 in 10 as being significant because I started by considering 2 significant figures, and when I rounded it, I ended up with the number 10. For 3 significant figures, we'll start by looking at the 3 most significant figures, the 9, and the 7. And after the 7, we've got an 8, which is definitely big enough, because it's 5 or higher, to round the 7 up. That 7 is going to become an 8. So to 3 significant figures, we've got 9.98. For those of you who paused to work ahead on your own, make sure you got the right answers. I hope that was okay. If you were working with me, make sure you copy those answers down, including the instructions and writing in brackets how many significant figures you had rounded to in each case. Let's go on to the practice exercise now. So for question 1, I want you to round those values to 1 significant figure. For question 2, I want you to give these values correctly to 2 significant figures. Now, giving these values correctly to 2 significant figures just means round this correctly to 2 significant figures. It is important that you have that vocabulary, so I'm writing these questions in different ways. So check out the wording in question 3. Write these values to 3 significant figures. That also just means round these values to 3 significant figures. So question 1, round to 1 significant figure. Question 2, round to 2 significant figures. And question 3, round to 3 significant figures. Make sure you read the questions carefully, you copy the initial value, and you round to the requested number of significant figures. Once you've rounded, make sure you put in brackets clearly how many significant figures you'd rounded to, so that when we compare our answers, we know what you've done. Go ahead and hit pause now and give that a go, and hit play when you're ready to take it up. I hope you've had a chance to hit pause, because here come your answers. For question 1A, we're rounding to 1 significant figure, that'll be 800. B, to 1 significant figure, that's a 2 in the thousands position, 2 thousandths. For question C, that 4 with a 0 after it will not round up, so that's 40,000. For question 2A, for question B, there is already only 2 significant figures. So that 2 has nothing after it. It's certainly not going to round up. That will stay 12 thousandths. C, my 2 significant figures are the 4 and the 0 has a 1 after it. That's not changing. Question 3 to 3 significant figures. For A, that will be the 1, the 0, and the 2 has a 4 after it, so it's not going to round up. For question B, 3 significant figures would be the 3, the 4, and the 9, but the 9 has a 6 after it. That's going to round it up, making that 9, 10, passing a 1 up to the next place value. That's 3,500. And question C, to 3 significant figures, would be the 7, the 2, and the 0. And the 0 with a 4 after it is not going to round up. So that's still 7,200. Hopefully that was all fairly straightforward. You might have also noticed that I put some digits in bold. Those are your significant figures, so that you can clearly see that although question 1A has got 3 digits to it, only the 8 is significant. These 2 trailing zeros are not significant. And B, only this 2 is significant. The leading zeros are not significant. In question 2A, however, the 4 and the 0 are significant because they were significant in the original value, but the last 2 trailing zeros are not significant. Same as in question C, that 0 is not only significant, but it is also necessary that we write it. If we're told to round to 2 significant figures, I want to at least see 2 digits there. So how did you do? Hopefully that was fairly straightforward. If not, please leave me a comment down in the comment section, and please feel free as well to check out our lessons on place value, rounding to place value, and rounding to decimal places. Otherwise, well done, keep practicing, and I'll see you soon.